A worker earning the average American salary of $62,000 a year can still retire with over $1 million. That is not a guess. It is basic math backed by government wage data and Vanguard's own savings research. If that same worker saves just 12% of their pay every year, starting around age 30, they can cross $1 million by 65. But here is the part almost nobody talks about. The strategy that actually gets you there has very little to do with how much you earn. It has everything to do with timing, automation, and a handful of decisions most people get backwards. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how an average earner becomes a retirement millionaire. We will cover the real savings rate that gets you there, the silent cost of waiting even 5 years, the hidden six-figure gift sitting in your paycheck, and the income order that decides how much of your money the tax man actually takes. By the end, you will know exactly where you stand and exactly what to change starting this week. Let's start with the number that matters most, your savings rate. In 2025, the median full-time worker in America made about $62,600 a year. Vanguard found that the average total savings rate, including what employers chip in, was 12% that same year. 12% of that salary works out to roughly $7,500 a year. Invested and compounded at 7% annually for 35 years, that grows to just over $1 million. Fidelity's numbers tell a similar story. Their average savers put away 14.2%, which builds to about $1.23 million over the same stretch. Notice neither of those numbers requires a six-figure salary, just a consistent percentage and enough time for it to grow. That is the entire secret hiding in plain sight. Savings rate plus time beats income every single time. Now here is the part that should genuinely worry you if you are waiting to start. The Department of Labor ran the numbers on what it actually takes to reach $1 million by 65. Start at age 20, and you only need to save about $3,500 a year. Wait until 30, and that number jumps to $7,234 a year. Wait until 40, and you are now looking at $15,811 a year. Wait until 50, and the number explodes to nearly $40,000 a year. In monthly terms, starting at 25 costs you about $381 a month. Wait 5 years to age 30, and that monthly number jumps to $555, a 46% increase for doing nothing but waiting. Wait 10 years to age 35, and you are now paying $820 a month, a 115% jump from where you could have started. Every year you delay is not a small mistake. It is a compounding tax on your future self. So if you're in your 20s or early 30s right now, this is the moment that decides everything. Let's talk about the second piece almost everyone underestimates, the power of a single extra percentage point. On the median American salary, 1 extra percent of pay is only about $626 a year. That sounds tiny, almost not worth mentioning. But compounded at 7% over 35 years, that 1 extra percent alone grows to $86,547. Stretch it to 40 years, and that single percentage point becomes $124,988. This is why financial advisors obsess over small contribution increases instead of chasing big salary jumps. A 1% raise in your savings rate can outperform years of trying to negotiate a higher paycheck. Now let's talk about the money that is already sitting on the table, your employer match. Fidelity reported the average employer 401k contribution rate was 4.8% in 2025. On the median salary, that is about $3,005 a year that your employer hands you for free. Compounded at 7%, that employer money alone grows to $415,427 over 35 years. Stretch it to 40 years, and it becomes $599,940, almost $600,000 from money you never even worked for. If you are not contributing enough to get your full employer match, you are walking past free money every single paycheck. Access to a workplace plan itself is one of the biggest hidden advantages in the entire system. AR-bound Americans are 15 times more likely to actually save for retirement when they have access to a workplace plan. And yet nearly 57 million workers in America still do not have access to one at all. If your employer offers a plan, you are already standing on ground most people never get to stand on. Now, here is where automation becomes your best friend, even more than motivation ever will. Researchers tracking one large employer found 401k participation jumped from 37% to 86% within just over a year after automatic enrollment kicked in. Across other employers, Automatic enrollment boosted participation by 50 to 67 percentage points within 6 months. Automation does not ask you to feel motivated, it simply removes the choice to do nothing. Vanguard went further and found that plans combining automatic enrollment with annual automatic increases saw savers contribute 20 to 30% more after just 3 years. In a single recent year, 16% of savers manually increased their own contribution rate, and another 29% were bumped up automatically. That means nearly half of all savers grew richer that year simply because their contribution rate moved up, not because the market did anything special. If your plan offers automatic annual increases, turning that feature on may be the single easiest decision in this entire video. Now, let's talk about something that quietly destroys millionaire status without you ever noticing: fees. The Department of Labor's own example shows $25,000 growing at 7% over 35 years. With a low 0.5% annual fee, that money grows to $227,000. With a higher 1.5% fee, the exact same starting amount only reaches $163,000. That 1 percentage point difference in fees alone cut the final balance by 28%. Checking your fund's expense ratio takes 5 minutes and could be worth tens of thousands of dollars by the time you retire. Let's move to a tool late starters consistently underuse: catch-up contributions. For 2026, the IRS set the 401k elective deferral limit at $24,500. Workers 50 and older can add an extra $8,000 in catch-up contributions on top of that. And workers aged 60 to 63 get an even larger special catch-up of $11,250. Combine the 401k and an IRA at that age, and a worker could shelter up to $43,250 in a single year. Even just 5 years of maxing that out at 7% growth compounds to about $248,719. If you started late, this is the closest thing the tax code offers to a second chance. There is also a credit almost nobody claims: the Saver's credit. The IRS says it can be worth up to $1,000 for a single filer or $2,000 for a married couple filing jointly. For 2026, the income limits rise to $40,250 for singles and $80,500 for married couples. If you qualify and you are not claiming it, you are leaving free government money unused every single year. Now let's talk about the part of this strategy almost every competing video gets wrong: withdrawal order. It is not just about how much money you have when you retire, it is about the order you pull that money out. Most retirees default to claiming Social Security early while leaving their 401k untouched, assuming that protects their nest egg. In reality, that order can trigger something called the Social Security tax torpedo, where extra withdrawals later push more of your Social Security benefit into taxable territory. It can also raise your Medicare premiums through higher income brackets, a cost called IRA that catches many retirees completely off guard. The smarter order often looks like this: draw from flexible accounts first, delay Social Security when you can, and use low-income years for Roth conversions. Vanguard's own research on Roth conversions says the better test is not your tax bracket today versus tomorrow, it is your break-even tax rate, called BET-ER, which factors in where the tax bill gets paid from. Coordinating these pieces is what actually decides how much of your $1 million you keep versus how much disappears in avoidable taxes. Social Security timing itself is one of the highest return decisions most retirees will ever make. The Social Security Administration confirms delayed retirement credits add 8% a year for every year you wait past your full retirement age. Wait from age 67 to age 70, and your monthly check rises by 24%. Claim early at 62 instead, and your benefit gets permanently cut by about 30%. That means waiting until 70 instead of claiming at 62 can mean roughly 77% more monthly income for the rest of your life. The Social Security Administration's 2026 average retired worker benefit sits at $2,071 a month, or just under $25,000 a year. Combine that with Morningstar's research showing a safe withdrawal rate of around 3.9% from a $1 million portfolio, about $39,000 a year, and a single retiree could see roughly $63,852 a year before tax. For a couple receiving the average combined benefit, that combined income rises to around $77,496 a year. Suddenly, $1 million stops looking small and starts looking like real, livable retirement income. But there is one number that quietly works against every plan you make: inflation. At the Social Security Administration's 2026 cost of living pace of 2.8%, $1 million 30 years from now will only buy what about $437,000 buys today? To keep today's exact spending power, you would actually need closer to $2.29 million instead of $1 million. This is not a reason to give up, it is a reason to keep contributing even after you technically hit the $1 million mark. Health costs are another silent threat most retirement plans completely ignore. Fidelity estimates a 65-year-old retiring today should expect about $172,500 in after-tax healthcare costs over their retirement. For a couple, that number nearly doubles to around $345,000, and that does not even include long-term care. Fidelity also says a person turning 65 has roughly a 70% chance of needing some form of long-term care during their remaining years. Medicare helps, but it is not free. The standard Part B premium for 2026 sits at $202.90 a month, with deductibles on top of that. Budgeting for healthcare before you retire is not pessimism. It is the difference between a comfortable plan and a painful surprise. Here's the encouraging part. You likely have more time than you think to make all of this work. The CDC reports that a 65-year-old in America can now expect to live another 19.7 years on average. That means most retirements last close to 2 decades, not the 10 years many people quietly assume while planning. Every extra year of healthy life is another year your portfolio gets to keep compounding, even as you draw from it. Now let's address the myth that you need to be a stock-picking genius to make any of this work. S&P Dow Jones indices found that 79% of actively managed large-cap funds underperformed the S&P 500 in 2025 alone. Since 1957, the S&P 500 has delivered roughly a 7% annualized price return, and about 10% including dividends reinvested. Dividends alone have contributed about 31% of the index's total return since 1926. In other words, simply holding a low-cost broad market fund and reinvesting dividends has historically outperformed most professional stock pickers. Target date funds make this even easier, with the average fee dropping to just 0.29% in 2024, less than half what it was back in 2009. These funds now hold $4.8 trillion in assets, proof that simple, low-cost, hands-off investing has become the default winning strategy for everyday Americans. Now, let's talk about who actually becomes a millionaire on an average income, because the data will surprise you. Ramsey Solutions surveyed 10,000 millionaires and found 8 out of every 10 had invested through their company 401k. 75% said consistent investing over a long period of time, not stock picking, was the real reason for their success. Only 31% of these millionaires averaged $100,000 a year over their entire career. 1/3 of them never made 6 figures in a single working year, not once. The most common careers among them were engineer, accountant, teacher, manager, and attorney, not finance executives or celebrities. 79% of these millionaires received no inheritance at all, and only 3% inherited $1 million or more. Most millionaires are not flashy, 94% live on less than they make, and 93% use coupons at least some of the time. This is the real face of an average salary millionaire: ordinary income, ordinary jobs, extraordinary consistency. Yet confidence and reality do not always match up in this country. EBRA found 67% of workers in 2025 felt confident about having enough money for retirement. But the Federal Reserve found only 35% of non-retirees actually believed their savings were on track. That gap between confidence and reality is exactly why a clear plan matters more than a comfortable feeling. AARP found 20% of Americans over 50 have no retirement savings at all, and 61% worry they will run out of money. Workers also expect to retire at 65, but EBRA found the median retiree actually stopped working at 62, often sooner than planned. 75% of workers plan to work for pay during retirement, but only 29% of actual retirees ever did. This tells us something important. Plans built around working longer or earning more later are far less reliable than plans built around saving consistently now. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research backs this up directly. People who answered 3 basic financial literacy questions correctly were almost 10 percentage points more likely to actually plan for retirement. And those without a plan retired with only about half the wealth of those who did plan. Planning itself, not luck, not income, not market timing, is one of the most millionaire-making habits there is. So let's bring this all together into the order that actually works. First, contribute enough to capture your full employer match. That is free money compounding for decades. Second, push your savings rate toward 12 to 15% as early as possible, since starting at 30 instead of 40 can cut your required savings nearly in half. Third, turn on automatic annual increases if your plan offers them, since that single switch can boost your contributions by 20 to 30% within 3 years. Fourth, check your fund fees, because a 1% difference in fees can cost you tens of thousands of dollars by retirement. Fifth, if you are over 50, use catch-up contributions aggressively, since even 5 years of maxing them out can add nearly $250,000. Sixth, plan your withdrawal order years before you retire, because the sequence you draw money in can be just as important as how much you saved. And finally, delay Social Security if you can, because waiting from 62 to 70 can mean 77% more income for the rest of your life. None of these 7 steps require a 6-figure salary, a finance degree, or a lucky stock pick. They require consistency, automation, and a plan that accounts for taxes, fees, and time, not just raw savings. The data is clear. Average earners are already becoming retirement millionaires by the hundreds of thousands every single year. The only real question left is whether your own plan is built to do the same thing. If you want to see exactly how poor withdrawal order quietly drains a retirement account, even one with $1 million in it, I have broken down that entire tax trap in another video, and you genuinely need to see it before you retire. Click that video next, because the order you take your money out in might matter more than how much you save to get there.